Now on this same trigger page we have kind of the counterpart to the condition, which is the scheduling, which we see by the time rule. Remember, there's really two parts to any kind of a notification or a calculation. The one part is the logic. What is it we're actually checking for? The second part is the scheduling of that logic. How often do we actually check? And probably the easiest, the most straightforward to understand is this natural. And by natural, what we mean is that any component within this comparison here, anything that you might add as new conditions, whether it's a straight comparison or some of these more advanced ones, any element attribute that changes value will trigger the evaluation of this notification. So in other words, when one of the inputs changes, then at that point we will go ahead and decide whether this logic applies at this point and whether we need to send a notification. So natural is, well, the natural thing to do. If you simply want data to be evaluated whenever it changes, then choose natural. Now sometimes that's not really what you're interested in, because what you're interested in is more of a calendar-based scheduling. The natural scheduling may end up overwhelming the system with just a tremendous amount of information. If you've got values always changing, maybe you just want to do this once every 5 minutes or once every 5 hours or once a day, for example. And that's what we can specify with periodic. Now periodic brings up this second dialog box that you see right here that allows you to specify exactly what kind of a periodic scheduling you want to choose. And as you can see, we've tried to make it easy for any type of daily or monthly evaluation. So for example, here we have by default 5 days a week at midnight. Most plants run 7 days a week. Most of them don't begin their fiscal day at midnight. So what you might find yourself doing is something like this. If you've got a daily evaluation, you may go 7 days a week, every day at 6 a.m. And that will be the calculation, or that will be the triggering. Also, we have choices for monthly. As you can see, with monthly, you also get to choose the start time. You get to choose the day, or if you don't go by the calendar, days of the month, you may go by kind of a modified weekly schedule in which you're saying, well, we only do this calculation, the first Tuesday of every month or something like that. So that's an option for you here. The last one is this periodic. Now this periodic allows you to specify a frequency of your own choosing. And these are generally based around a 24-hour period. So let me explain what I'm talking about. If I were to set this at, say, well, let's say you've got a 7 o'clock start of your fiscal day, and I specify a frequency of 8 hours. Okay. What this indicates to us is that this will start the calculation or start this notification test at 7 a.m. and then it'll wait for this frequency. So it's going to wait 8 hours, it'll do it 7, and then again at 3 p.m., and then again at 11 p.m. And then the next day it starts all over again. So in this case we're going to end up with exactly 3 a day. If I were to set this to 12 hours, then we would do an evaluation at 7 a.m. and then another one at 7 p.m. Okay, but let's say you come up with something that's kind of odd, like, oh, I don't know, you go with 10 hours. Now 10 hours would give you a calculation at 7 o'clock, another calculation at 5 p.m., and then no more calculations for that day. And then we'll start the next day at 7 o'clock and then at 5 p.m. Kind of an odd calculation. But you see, what we're doing is we're resetting this at the beginning of each 24-hour period. So we're always going to have this calculation at 7 and then whatever frequency after that for that 24-hour period. We, of course, can specify, other than hours, we can also specify minutes and seconds if you prefer. And I want to point something out about this duration field. You can ignore it. It's an unimplemented field in the current instance. So it's just something you can ignore, and I'm sorry if that's caused you any inconvenience. It's something that we need to address in the next release because it simply does not affect this calculation in any way imaginable. So do not fret over what this duration is. It's simply put, the only things that are going to affect this are the beginning and the frequency. And of course what you choose here. So you can completely ignore that duration field. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of this periodic and just go ahead and set this at natural. I want this to change every time the input changes. Now these last few options here are for trying to reduce the number of, I guess, what you might call nuisance notifications or nuisance alarms. So for example, the default here, notify only on change in status. What we mean by that is we only would like to be notified when the status of the notification changes, say from a not a trigger state into a trigger state. In other words, if we have a value that changes 8 times, each time it's over 250, do we really want to see 8 notifications saying, oh, now it's 260, now it's 270, now it's 280? Well, we may or we may not. You get to choose that. So if you choose by default, it's going to be set checked here. So by default, this is only going to give us a notification if it goes over 250 and then under 250 and then over 250 again. That's a change in status. And if you clear this field, then of course every single time we get a new value that comes in that triggers the notification, we'll get a new notification sent. So that's, that obviously that's up to you. Now we also have this option called a resend interval. And by resend interval, what we mean here is that even if we don't have a change in status or a new value coming in, we can specify how frequently we want to resend this. So it's kind of a reminder. In some cases, yes, of course, you do want to keep on reminding people, say every 5 minutes, I'd like to send a new notification. And that notification will happen whether we get a new value here or not, and whether the status changes or not. You'll also find we have an option called non-repetition interval that has the effect of throttling the notifications. We have some nice illustrations of these different settings you'll find in the Pi Notifications user guide. See, with this non-repetition interval, let's imagine that you've got a situation where this is the point at which an alarm goes off for this process value that we're looking at right here. So this is our process value. And so what we're seeing is at that point in time right there, that's when we trigger the notification. And if you've got this non-repetition interval set, then no matter what happens after that, even though we have another notification event at that point in time, we're not going to repeat that notification. This little icon that you see here indicates that's when we send out a notification. So as you can see, even though we actually have that trigger event which sends a notification, this one doesn't send a notification because of the effect of this non-repetition interval. Now here we have yet another notification event, but we're not going to send the notification that pertains to that until that non-repetition interval is over. So once that's over, at that point, right at that point in time, that's when we're going to go ahead and send the notification.